Alright, so welcome back again. So in this wonderful and exciting tutorial, I'll be trying to see a very nice framework which is similar to Streamlit, which is very useful for building Python web applications, right? So let's see what I mean by that. So it's called Taipy, right? Taipy. And Taipy is another alternative to Streamlit, which is very, very powerful and easy to work. And it comes with its own features. So let's see how to work with Taipy. So this is a simple overview, a simple crash course we'll be doing about Taipy. So Taipy is actually behind the scene, right? It is running on Flux, right? So if you know Flux, you know that Flux is very stable. And then it allows you to be able to write your code in Python and then in different ways, and you to get a very nice interface like as you're seeing here, right? Okay, so let's see how it works. So it works with visual elements, and these visual elements can be in 3 different forms, right? So you can write your Taipy application in 3 different ways. You can use the Markdown approach, right? The Markdown visual element approach, which goes with this particular syntax. So you have a Markdown, and then you have your variable name, your variable, then your visual element name, and then the parameters, right? So this is the syntax for the Markdown approach. You can also follow the Python approach, right? The Python visual element approach, in which you have your normal Python, and then the visual element name, and then some stuff. You can also write it in a format of HTML. So let's see how to build our simple Taipy app in this crash course. I'll go back again to our workspace. So in case you don't have Taipy, I'm going to stop the old one that was running, and then we will start over, right? So let's get out of here, and then I'll come down here. So I'm going to create a virtual environment, and then we will install the necessary packages, right? So let's activate this, activate, then pip install Taipy, right? So that is the package we are installing. So Taipy is the name of the library we'll be using for our work. Okay, as you can see, there's Flux there, there is some other packages, so it's built on top of Flux, right? Okay, together with some different libraries. Let's just finish. Okay, so that there is Markdown, MarkSafe, and then it has finished already. Okay, so let's start with it. So whilst it is setting up, we will go back again to our location. Let me position it side by side. So right click to this, and then we will pick it here, right? So I'm going to create another file in the same location, right, for our application. So this is the location that we have, and I'm going to create my file. So let's create a simple file called app.py, and then I open this one with VS Code. Then you start writing some code there, right? So this is VS Code. So Taipy also has extension, VS Code extension, that you can also search for to make your work easy. So I can go back to Taipy Studio, and then with Taipy Studio you can also help you generate the various things you need, right? So this is another extension can also be used when you're trying to build your application. We'll explore that one later. Okay, let's go back again to our workspace, and then let's start with it. So I'm just going to go with from Taipy import GUI, right? So this is the main things we'll be working with. So let's see if that's finished installing. So it's still installing. And then there are 2 ways. As I said, there is the there's a visual element, right? So there is the Markdown approach, right, in which you have a Markdown. So you can have something like a simple Markdown like this. So let's call this as my Markdown that I would want to use, right? You can use the Markdown approach in case you want. So I can have something like my page, right, which is in the format of a Markdown, and I can just write my normal Markdown. So let's say Taipy crash course, and then with the Markdown visual element approach, you go with this particular option. So you just go with the brackets, then you have 2 pipes, right? Then your variable can be here, so I can have a variable like, let's say, title, right? And then I can just put in my visual element, right? So the visual element can also be in another pipe, so something like test. So now I can bind this variable, just like using f-string, right? So this variable can be found somewhere else. So I can just have, say, title, then I say this is the title, right? Perfect. So this is the visual element, Markdown visual element approach. And then how do you run it? So to run it, all you need to do is that you need to import. I've already imported it, so you can just create an underscore. So if name is equal to main, so we want to run it as a file, then I can just go with my GUI, then I'll pass in the page, right? So this is the first way. So the page, that is the page, the Markdown, entire stuff. Then I can just go with dot run. Then, as you could see, we have allow safe westclick boolean. Consider we have, if you are familiar with Flux, consider this is similar to Flux. Most of these things are Flux stuff. And then I can just go with something like use reloader. I'll set it to true, so that anytime I make a change, it reloads. I can set debug to true like Flux, right, to true. And then I can even specify the port. So by default, it will use the normal Flux port, which is 5000, right? You can also change the port. So this is how it works, right? Very simple. So let's go back. Now it has finished, so I can come back again to my location here, and then this is where it is. So if I go with Taipy version, so this is the current version that we are working on, so version 3.1, right? I can see how to use it. So if I go with help, I can see the various ways we can use Taipy. Okay, so we can just run it with this option here, run. There is create, migrate, and there are several things there. So let's go with Taipy, run, and then the name of the app. So this is going to use Taipy to run, and as I said, it's built on Flux, so it's going to spin it up. And because we set debug to true, we can see it here. And then this is the port, this listening notes. I can just copy this port here, the number, and then if I go back to my browser, so let's close this one, and let's close Streamlit also. And then I come back here, I run it. You can see that now we have Taipy crash course. And this test that you are seeing here is the same test we had here, right? So this is exactly the same test. So it's very simple to use, right? So it's like yeah, see, this is a title. This is exactly what we have here, right? And it is already rendering the Markdown. So if I change this one to something like another Markdown, so Markdown works. So I can say, so this is 3. This is Markdown. Right? Like do the normal stairs for this. You see that if I refresh this one here, so this is Markdown, right? It has been rendered in Markdown. If I go back and I inspect it, you can see the element. So it's for Taipy. So it's, you see that it's using JSS parser and it's having Markdown and all of these things rendered well. Perfect. So that is the Markdown virtual element approach. This is one of the ways you can run it, right? Which is good, which is okay. But we are mostly Python people, so let's go with the Python approach, which is the other alternative. So let's see how to do that. Okay, so we're going to do a simple crash course. Apologies for how long the tutorial will be. Yeah, because you're all learning. So let's start with it. Okay, so we'll be going through all the various elements of it. I'll come back again to, this is the visual element, right? So in case I don't want to use this, so let's hide all of this. I can go with the different approach. So the other approach is that you can just go back and then from Taipy.GUI, right, there is a GUI builder as TGB. So it's not from, but import TGB, right? Taipy GUI builder, which is the one that allows us to be able to use the Python visual border approach. So instead of using this method that we had here, we can now use this option here. So it first goes with TGB. Go with TGB dot let me increase the volume. We can go with tgb.page, right? Then I'll pass in as page, right? So just like the same thing. So this is similar to what we did here. Then now I can now write all my code here. So tgb, so Taipy page builder or GUI builder. Then I can specify test, right? And then I can pass in my value. So whatever value I want to pass there, I can pass the same thing there. So this is going to be something like, let's go back here. So it takes in the value, the mode, right? So the mode can be, you specify the mode in case you want it to be Markdown or something else, or HTML or something. And then you can also give your test. So I can just pass in a value here, right? And I can just say, okay, this is tgb, right? And then I can specify the mode. So the mode now is MD Markdown, right? Perfect. So how do we run it? So we have page here and we are passing page here. We run it. So this is also another way you can also run. If I save it and I refresh, if I refresh it, you see now this is tgb, right? So this is another way we can use it, right? So either you use the Markdown approach for the virtual element, or you use the Python approach. So this is the Python right? So either you use the one above or you use this one, right? So anyhow it will work. Perfect. So let's go back and see how to, we have seen how to render a simple test with a Markdown. In case I want to give a test, I can just go with test like this, and I can just say this is a test, right? And to work, how do we do something like this, right? Whereby we have a variable and then we use a variable within it. We can just go with this tgb.test. Then I can just pass in my variable like you would have done with f strings. So in f string we just pass in something like this, right? And then I can pass in my title here. So if I pass in my title here, now if I refresh it, we're going to have the this is title below, right? So this is a test, this is a title. Perfect. So that is how to work with the normal test. In case you also want to work with input, how do you work with input? This input. So input widgets. How do we do that? I can just go with tgb, right? Taipy GUI builder. Then I can just go with all the different formats. So as you can see, we have all these features that are supported out of the box, right? So let's go with input, because that's what we want to do. And I want to have a simple input to use. So in that case, I can just pass in my title. So let's say I'll pass in the title here. So now this input is now going to be binary to this particular title here. And I can give it a label, right? So that we know what it is. So I can say this is a title. And then if I refresh it here, you're going to see that we have a test input with this is a title, right? And you can see the name here, right? So I can also change this one to, let's say, first name. So tgb.input. I can say this is first name. So let's say first name, right? And then I can give it a label. The name is going to be first name. If I save it and I refresh, you can see that we have two inputs. We have the first one that is coming with the original test and the second one, right? So because you already have a test here, we saw the test here, but as it's very dynamic and it's bounded to it. So as I type, so that is being shown here. So that is how to bind it, right? So you declare it somewhere and then you use it, right? I can also do the same thing. This variable has not been declared yet. So if I go back to my logs, you're going to be having that error here. So variable is not defined, right? Because I have specified it, but I have not defined it. So how do we do that? So we can actually now bind this first name to another stuff. So tgb.test, and then I can bind it to here. So I can bind it to something like the first name, this is how we do the binding. So so another element, so we are trying to bind this input to another element, and then I can just go back again. I can also give it a class name. So the class name is like HTML CSS. So I can say this is going to be C4, right? And then I can also give it something. So if I save it and then I refresh, I can now type in Jesse. You can see that now it has been bounded to this test, and you can see what was typed there. Right? That is how to bind to another element. Perfect. That is for test input, right? Let's see number input. So in case I want to do number input, how do I do that? So tgp.number, and I can pass in my widget. So let's pass in age, right? And I can give it a label. So the label is going to be, let's say, age. Right, so if I save it now, and then I can refresh. So if I go back here, we have age, and this is a number, right? So you can see that it's going up and down, but this is not bounded to anything. So I can bound or bind or connect this to another element for it to work, right? Perfect. So let's go on to date input. So in case you want to do date, how do you work with date? So tgp.date, then I can pass in a date, right? So I can pass in, let's say, date of birth, and then I can give it a label. Then label is a DOB. Perfect, right? And I can also specify a range. So that now we have the date of birth, and this is a nice calendar with the date. You can choose as you wish. All of them there, right? Very cool. Similar to Streamlit, right? All of them is out of the box. Okay. I can also work with ranges. So in case I have a range of days and I want to work with it, I can also do the same thing. So let's import daytime. So we import daytime. Then I'm going to paste in some start date there, right? So yeah, something like this. Some dates, some simple dates here, and I'm putting them here, start and end, and I want to do a date range. So to do a date range, say tgp.typy.date range, and I can pass in my date range here. So I can pass in the date range that we have. Remember that you have to declare the variable in this format, which is my date, right? If I go back here and I refresh, now we're going to have the dates range there, right? So this is the date range, which is very cool, right? Perfect. You can also give it a label in case you want. Label for the end and for the start. So in case I want to give a label for the start, so I can say entry, right? And then the last going to be exit, right? So if I go back and I refresh, we're going to have a very nice feature here. It's an entry and then exit, which is very, very nice. After the box, we have this nice feature. Okay, let's move on from the date input and do some other forms of. So let's work on buttons. How do you work with buttons? To work with buttons, just go to tgp.button, and then you can just pass in the name of the button. So this is going to be the label, so I'll call it as reset, and then I can work on the on action, right, which is another feature of Taipy. So let's say on action, then I can pass in a particular function. So the function can be, let's say I want to reset something, so reset button, right? And then I have to define this function here. So I'll go back to the top of my application. Let's call it as functions, which is going to be def reset button. And because of the architecture of Taipy and how it works with states, you will have to first pass in state there, right? So this state is the global state that allows you to have to store this session state for that particular tab that has been opened, so that in case different people are working on the application, they all have their own state, right? So I can just go back here to state, and then I would want to change one of the tests there. So let's say I want to clear off this title, right? So how will I do that? So I'll go with state, right, dot title. It can be, it's like a dictionary, so this can be anything, right? It can be any of these things. So I'm binding this state to the title here, which is defined here, right? This particular one, and then I can set it to, let's say I want to set it to new, right? Now if I click on this button now, so let's refresh, I have my button. So this is a title. If I click on this, I see now this is new, right? So that is how to bind or attach a function, right, to a particular button. So if I click on it, this new. So if I go back and I change this, so this is old, and I click on reset, this is new. So this is one of the ways you can use the buttons, right? I can also do one to clear something. So let's say button, then submit, which will go on action. Then I can say maybe submit button, and I can pass another function there. So let's say I want to change something, right? I want to set, so in case when I do that, I want to change the first name to something else, so Jesse, and then I want to also change something, so state the age to a particular age, so let's say 27, something like this. So now if I click on the button, on this button, if I refresh it, you notice that we have nothing here in the age, but if I click on the submit, it's supposed to have worked, but it seems because there is nothing there, that's why it's not working. And one of the things I have to define them, right? So it is, I think the reason it's not seeing them is that we did not define them before. So submit button. Now let's see, let me define the values there. I'll go back and then give the age as, let's say 4, right? And then the first name as, let's say Jesse or John, something like that. And if I save it and refresh, if I click on, see that Jesse and John is here, if I click on submit, then now it has changed, right? Very cool. And I can reset and clear off this. Perfect. So that is something very cool we can do. I can also take all of this and then pass all my variables and reset all of them. So do the same thing here, right? So this is, use it to reset everything, right? So now if I refresh, I reset everything, I click on the reset, everything is cleared, right? Very useful. Okay, so let's move on from the buttons, and then we can also do something with the buttons, like we can also do status. So tgb.status, and I can specify a particular status, right? So I can pass in a value or some item, right? So I can pass in, let's say, a simple item. So yeah, something like this. And if I refresh, so we have it here, right? So we have 4. If I pass in, so now it is changing dynamically, but I can't reset all of them. Okay, let's move on to some other features, right? So we are done with the buttons. Let's see how to work with sliders. How do you work with sliders in Taipy? So tgb.slider, then I can pass in a particular value. So let's pass in the age. I want to change the age. So now if I've bounded this age, right, together, or I can, yeah, I've bounded the age together. So now if I click on this one, the age is changing, right? The age is changing. Very nice. And then you can use it to do a lot of things. We can specify the maximum. So minimum, so the minimum can be a particular value, so let's give it like 0, and then the max is 120, and then I can give it a label, right? You can give it labels and then the rest. Yeah, but let's keep it like this. Okay, and if I wish, so now it's changing. It cannot move beyond that, right? Very cool. Okay, let's see one more. We can also do file selection. Remember that all this we are doing, right? All this we are doing here, we could have done it this way with this syntax. Right, you could have done it with this syntax. So something like this, you could have done the title and then test, right? You could have done it this way for it to work, right? And the same with the input, you could have changed it and make it input. The same with number, you could have made it like number, right? All of them could have done it this way, but I prefer this one. Maybe another time you go through that. Okay, let's move on from here and work with selection. So in case you want to do selection to select different stuff, I can do the same thing with tgp.selector, and then I can pass in some things I want to select. So let's pass in a value of what we want to select. I want to select, let's say, language, and I'll give it my list of values. So love, this is not love, right? It is list of values. That's what I was confused about. And then this can be a list, so you can just pass in some lists. So let's say this is Python, this is Golang, this is JavaScript, and this is Julia, and then we have Rust, right? Or C++. From easy to difficult. Okay, perfect. So that is something like this. If I go back to the selector and I refresh it, we are going to have the option of selecting it, and we have the options here, right? So I can select it here, and I can bind this one to a value. So I can just go back here and say tgp.test, then I can pass in the lang here, so that if I come down and I select one, it is reloading, you're going to see it selected there. So if I go back and I click on Python, so now Python has been selected below, right? You can also make it multiple. So this is just one. I can make it multiple selection by changing this one from here. I just add and multiple is equal to true. So let's bring it down. You can also give it a label, and let's call it as a programming language. Right, this is multiple. So since you have made it multiple, if I refresh it now, I can select multiple items, and automatically I have this checkbox because I can select multiple stuff. So Python and Go, and then you see that all of them have been selected and added here, right? We can also add a filter because it can be a lot of lists. So if I go back down here, I can add a filter, and if I set the filter to true, that gives us the ability to search for it, similar to, in case you're coming from Streamlit, something similar like that, right? So I can now search for something like, let's say, Go, right? And it's automatically selected. Perfect. Which is cool out of the box. I wonder how it is being done. Let's see. I'm curious. Okay, so it's having an input field. Okay, that's what it's been doing. Cool. Okay, so let's move on from here to other stuff. So we have done with selection. We can also do file selection. So in case you have file selection, so you can just go to tgp.file selector, and then in case you have a content that you want to pass there, you can also pass it there. So let's go with dot, and then I can also specify the label. So let's say select CSV files, and I can give the extensions. So the extensions is going to be, you have to bring the dot there, so CSV, and I also want dot tst. Perfect. And then I can give it a class name, right? All of these things can give it a class name. The class name that I want it to be full. So if I don't give it a class name and I save it, right, and I refresh, we will be able to select the files, right? If I come down here, so we have select CSV file, the same name here, and only CSV have been selected here, right? So I can actually select that particular file and then I can open it, right? So file has been uploaded. You can do something with it. You can also make this, if you check it here, you see that it is just one, right? You can make it bigger. You can change the class. Even with the selector here, you could also make it bigger. So class name, can specify it as full width. And then once you do that, you will be able to see it bigger. So it is longer. Now it is very, very long, right? So I can select multiple stuff there, and then you can see, right? So this is some very cool stuff you can also do with it. Very nice. Okay, you can take off the search field. So go right and the rest. Okay, so let's take off this. This is something you can also do. You can also do the same thing for the file selector here also. Okay, let's move on from there to, with a file selector, you can, since we are selecting one file, you can also specify that you want multiple to be true, so that you can select multiple files. So if I open it, I can select, now I can't select, I have to refresh. So if I refresh it, I can select multiple files now. I can just select 1, 2, so that just working. So you see that you can have multiple files selected. Perfect. Let's see, you can also do file download. Since we are still on file selection, I can just specify that I want to download a file. So tgb taipy.file download. Then you specify the particular file, or so it can be, let's say, my file or my content, and then you specify the label you want to give to it. So download file, and you can also add an action to it, right? So a particular function, so that when you click on this button, this thing is done, right, to download the file. You can also specify the file name, and you can also specify auto. So if I go auto, it's equal to true, automatically once the page is loaded, it's going to download that particular file, right? Once you click on the button. So now, yeah, it's, we did not see it, but you can also do the same thing, right? Okay, so let's save it and let's refresh. Yeah, let's take it off. Let's refresh it. Okay, so that is for file download. What else is important that we can do with this? So now we have the file download here, and you have a function attached to it. On the onAction method, you can do some stuff with it. Okay, let's move on to media, right? How do you work with media files? So for now, what I know is that we can do tg.image, right? So you can, in case you have an image, you can pass in the image there. So let's say I have an image variable, and then I can give the name of the image. So let's say image. Then I can specify what I want to do on action. So on action, I want you to load the image, right? So load image. And then I can create this particular function here. So I'll come back to the top of my file. And let's give a variable called image, which is going to be, let's say we have some image somewhere. So I'll go back here. If I have some image, so let's see, we have some image from here. So I'll copy this. Let's copy. I'm on Windows. I'll copy image to Taipy, right? And then if I go to Taipy, we have the image there. I can now open this image. So image example.png. I go back to what you are seeing. So this is a variable I've created, and I can create a function. So the function can be, in case I click on the image, so def.load image, which takes the state always, don't forget, and then I can say state.image is equal to this image, right? So let's see how it works. I can come down here, and then if I refresh it now, if I refresh it, it failed because a variable is missing. Yeah, because of this. Okay, I hope you are enjoying it. I hope it's not too long. Okay, so let's see. If I come down to where we are, so now the image is there, right? Very cool, right? You can even go without the image and then just go straight away with that particular image. So if I go without the action, because we already have the image already loaded, you're going to see it there. So this is another way you can also pass the image. So pass the image variable straight away and it will be loaded. Okay, I think there is none for audio yet. There's none for audio, there's none for video yet, right? Okay, unlike Streamlit. Okay, so let's move on to one more, which is layout. How do you work with layout? Which is very important, right? How do you work with layout? So to work with layout is very simple. You just go with there is two options. So there is Navbar for the layout, in which you can just do tgb.navbar, then you pass in your list of values, not lav but list of values, and then this can be the same thing we do. It can be a dictionary or a set, and then inside the set you can just pass in your list, right? So this can be, let's say let's go page or page 1, and this can be, let's say, my home page. So home page, and then you can also add another one. So this is going to be 1, then I can also repeat, right? So let's copy this and repeat. So in case you have another page 2, this can be a URL. So let's say about, right? If I save it now and I refresh, we are going to have the option to move to this particular tab. And I say we have a home page, so home and about, and once I click on it, I went to page 2 here. So this can be a URL. It can be, let's say, https, can be, let's say, taipy.io, right? And then if I go refresh and I come down to here, if I click on the about page, now we'll be moving to taipy.io, right? Perfect. That is how to work with the navbar for the layout. You can also do a normal layout. So it's going to be with, which is a context manager, tgb Taipy GUI builder. Then we go with the layout. Then here we can specify the different columns. We can specify the gap, we can specify an ID, we can specify different format, right? So you can do something like this. I don't know where it's 1. So 1, yeah, something like 1. That is the default. So 1, 1, 1, right? As you are seeing here, equivalent to this. So you can just copy this one here and then use it here. And then this is going to be our context manager. Then we can just go with tgp.path, because we have 3 paths. I can now pass in whatever I want to do there. So let's say a test. I said, see, I'm doing Streamlit. Oh boy. I can just do test, then I'll pass in my, so let's say first name, right? So this is 1, and I can repeat it for another one for the remaining 3, right? So this can be, let's say, title, right? And then if I refresh, because we had 3, 1 2 3 columns, now I'm going to have my partitioned, or columns for 3, right? Consider we have 1 2 3, right? Very nice. So you can actually do that with the layout. There are also ways you can also do. You can also use columns, right? As you are seeing here, you can use gaps and the rest. Okay. And then the next important thing with Taipy is with plots. How do you plot in Taipy? So before we plot, let's see how to work with DataFrames, right? Because a data app without data frame is not complete. Without data, it's not complete. So let's see. So we can just load pandas. So let's import pandas as PD. And then I can copy some data. So let's go back here, get out of here, and then CP. We have iris data, or do you have iris here? And copy to Taipy, right? And then now I can load the data. So I can load my data, or I can use a function to load the data, and then I will just return it. So I can just create a simple utility function here to load the data, and then I'll just pass in that particular data here. So in case I want to load the data, I can just say, okay, this is the data. You can pass the data above the context manager. So I can say my df is going to be load data, and I'll pass in our famous iris data set. It can be any data set. Then I can come down here, and in case I want to show it, I can just go with tgb Taipy. Then there is table. I can pass in my data, right, to df. And if I go with this, there's so many things. There is data. It comes with page size, show all, selected, columns, number format, so many things, right? You can hover test, very cool. And if I save it and then I refresh, we are going to see a very nice table. Let me expand it so that I can see it, of the data, right? Which is very, very cool. And it has the number of pages, the number of rows that you want to see. I want to see only 5. I can skip, right? Very, very nice, right? You can also change the order, all of them out of the box. Cool. Okay, now let's see how to plot. So how do we plot? So we can simply plot. There are several ways you can plot. One of the ways of plotting is that you can just use any plotting library, but we can also plot with this option. So let's say I want to do a simple chart, right? So to plot, just go to tgb.chat. Then I'll pass in my data. Then I'll specify the type of plot I want and the mode. So I can pass in the data that we have there. So let's pass in the data as, or you can say data. Then we can pass in the data as my df. Right, you can do it this way. You can just pass the data straight away, and then you can just specify the type of plot that you want. So in case you want a bar chart or you want a different form of chart. So let's go with the type of chart. So type is going to be bar, and then I can specify S because it's a bar chart. I can pass in the sepal width, and then for the other one, for the Y, I can specify the sepal length. And that is how to do the plot. If I refresh it, you're going to see a bar chart plot there. Right, Very, very cool. And you can zoom in, zoom out, you can expand like this, like Plotly. I'm sure this is Plotly behind the scene, right? Yeah, this looks like Plotly for me. Yeah, it's Plotly. Okay, so very cool. You can do a lot of plots, not only just bar. You can also change it to a different form of chart, right? There are different ones, different forms, right? And also you can also do a dialog in case you want to do a dialog. This is a plot, right? So the plots can be bar plots, it can be different forms of plots as you wish. Okay, then let's see some final things you can also do. These are some finals. Yeah, there is scenarios you can also do. There is also tgb.tree, right, in which you can pass in a list of values to see, right? In case you have a dictionary, you can also do the same thing here. Or you can also do a dialog, right? So there's an option of doing a dialog, which is something similar to this, right? Perfect. So this is how to work with Taipy, right? Very simple and very nice framework. Let me know your opinion about it. Okay, now let's go back to the extensions, and then let's see what the extensions have to offer. So there's Taipy Copilot, Taipy Studio Helper, right? But the one we are using is Taipy Studio. And then once you do that, it's going to have some various features we can use within Taipy, right? So this is an extension that has been installed. And then if I come down here, I hope it's shown additional view. Here we have Taipy Studio. So we have Taipy config, and then it's going to load any configuration it's going to find. So you see that we have some configurations here in case you are working with the studio, and we have data nodes in which you have different data that you want to work with, some tasks, and then some scenarios, right? So you can also go back and pick a scenario. If you have a scenario, you can create a simple scenario. Very nice. So there are so many things that we can explore, and this is some of them. So thank you for watching this long tutorial. In case you have any question or contribution, you can put it at the comment section below, and then see you in the next session. Stay blessed. Bye.